Well, hello there, brothers and sisters. I'm Dan.
I'm Lisa.
And welcome back to Siblings in Zion, our podcast, which this is the first episode of season 3. Here
Wow.
We're doing it.
We did it! Wow, third time's a charm.
It. Yeah, it's been a few months, and we're back. We're getting into it.
I feel good. You feel good?
Feeling okay.
I'm feeling okay.
So in the meantime, we watched the other NXIVM documentary, and that was called
Seduction?
Right?
Or The Seduction?
Sure.
Seduce?
Should probably
some form
fact
of that
check that
word. Seduced, inside the NXIVM cult.
Mm-hmm. The most recent cult to be fully exposed, I think. It's been around for a bit, and Keith Raniere's been bullshitting people for something like 30 years, but he is now in jail because of the fucked up shit that he did.
He is in jail.
While he was known as Vanguard, quote unquote, to his group of followers, mostly women. And I guess it was presented as some sort of like self-help, self-improvement business, but
I would say, aren't they all? But no, they're not.
No, but they would sell you courses on just blanket improvement, self-betterment, and success using a hodgepodge of different psychological approaches, many of which I could recognize from Scientology. They did a form of auditing, and they used a lot of the same terms.
We can get into the specifics of it, but just generally, it was advertised as a self-help empire.
That's what it presented itself as. It literally sold itself as, because it was not a cheap endeavor.
No, it started as ESP.
Executive Success Program.
Exactly. Which, obviously, they were aiming to make money from this.
Yeah.
If it was a success program designed for business executives.
Yeah. Which I don't think it actually, from those avenues, didn't really make that much money. But it was all funded by super wealthy people.
Yeah.
Who just gave Keith money to do whatever he said he was going to do. And it seemed like no questions asked. Like they were just so hooked on this cult of personality. They were just pumping millions into it.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't know how to tell you in words how much your being in my life has changed my life.
The footage of these people just falling all over themselves. And every single woman would kiss him on the lips.
He would kiss every single person on the lips.
They would kiss him back.
Even if they didn't want to.
Sure. They did a lot of shit they didn't want to do.
Yuck.
But yeah, so this is the second documentary series that's come out. The other one came out on HBO. This one came out on Stars. It was definitely different.
Yeah.
It was not a recycling of the same information.
Did you feel like you preferred one or the other?
This one was shorter, and there seemed to be more information and less kind of drama.
Yeah, that's a good way to distinguish it.
The other one was kind of drawn out a bit.
Yeah, the other one felt like a reality show, almost.
The trial was happening, and Keith was arrested, but he hadn't been sentenced yet. And now he's been sentenced to, I think, 120 years in prison.
I did prefer the second one just because it was shorter. It did feel like it had more information.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciated having what felt like a setup and then a sequel, almost.
Kind of felt like that, yeah.
One as it happened, another in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until we watched the second one that I wanted to do an episode about it.
Okay.
I don't want to so much dive into the details of the...
Sure, you should definitely watch them.
Yeah, I don't want to just rehash what's already available.
Anyone who has been in what you might call a cult would see a lot of similarities and familiarities depending on which perspective you come from. Because I've looked into so many other things. I saw a mosaic. And of course, it all comes down to weird sex stuff.
When you boil it all down, that's all it is.
It always goes there.
Sooner or later. And obviously, we're coming at it from, or I'm coming at it from, this is how it relates to Mormonism.
Yeah.
Specifically, a lot of it reminded me of things I felt on my mission.
Interesting.
Because that is the most textbook cult-like scenario in the Mormon church.
Honestly, until the last few years, and even when you were on your mission, I didn't really think of it like that.
It's extremely intensive.
Because that's not the way that it's presented
No.
to even the members of the church, even from missionaries after they return.
Yeah.
I mean, you can often see a difference in somebody when they return, but they are not telling you just how insanely constructed and constrictive your whole life is for so long.
Yeah.
Just how much deep indoctrination happens. And brainwashing, to a degree, I would say.
Yeah.
I wish I would have known more of that before you went.
What would that have changed?
If I could have told you just how, because they tell you it's going to be difficult, but it's going to be the best thing you ever do.
Past 2
because
years.
it's so difficult. But that's ridiculous. A, why are you paying for it? That's insane. The church has more than enough money to pay people who are working for them full time, not just 8 hours a day, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I had known just how controlled you were going to be for a specific reason, to break you down and repurpose you,
Yeah.
I would have probably tried to talk, at least make sure you knew that.
Right. And maybe it would have changed things, but it probably wouldn't have. Just because at that
Probably
point,
not.
I was so committed and I felt like I had a spiritual confirmation that it was what I was supposed to do.
But it's possible that while you were out there, you would have confirmed these things in action.
That's true.
And maybe started to see things as they really were and not through a completely myopic spiritual lens.
Yeah, because it was the first time I was confronted with these kind of tactics.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any way to filter them through myself. I thought these are original ideas. I had no way of seeing it other than fresh perspective. This is from the Lord.
Yep.
This is from the prophet. There's nothing manipulative about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So like I said, I have pages of notes. I'll start with a thread.
Okay.
I'll try to find all the things I have related to that. And we'll go through it that way, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, Lisa's taking the lead on this one. So here we go.
So the first thing that I wrote down from the very beginning is that Keith Raniere sprinkled so many lies into the truth, or vice versa, so many pieces of truth into so many lies.
Yeah.
Which is how you convince someone to do the things that he did, or that he had people do, is by folding and manipulating so much information that sounds true on the onset, but then he involves his own agenda in often too graphic of language.
Yeah, there was more of that, it seemed to me as we were watching it, in this version.
Oh, yeah. A lot of his perversion came out more in black and white to me in this version. One of the things that he said that if you just read and didn't know who said it, you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. He said, if we want the world to be less violent, we need to change our values and principles. You can see that if people are devoted to materialism, it takes away from compassion. It increases objectification of people. It leads to more violence, leads to more war. It doesn't have to be that way. That's how people get involved in things like this, is they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They want to do the right thing. They want to be a, quote, good person.
Yeah.
Whatever that means. They want a community of people who agree with them on the right values and the right way of living. And I can see how they thought that he was providing a structure for that.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when he says things like that. So when he starts talking about raping babies, that it's
yeah,
so great.
That was really weird.
Yeah, seriously. Watching it again, I was like,
and they played that clip
too many times,
like several times.
A weird amount of times.
I'll put it in here just so there's context for what he said and how he said it.
Thank you.
A psychopath doesn't have any empathy, just sees something that feels good. Raping a person, raping a cat, whatever it is. Do you understand how you could rape a baby? I can make it a baby that's very rapeable.
People feel like they're joining something that's going to give them purpose, that's going to help them find success. And yet, this turned out to be what one of the, I don't remember which guy, I don't remember his title, but it was the guy that was talking about cults in general, like he had studied them a lot. I should have written down
Steven
his name.
Hassen?
Maybe? Older guy?
He basically wrote the book on it.
Okay. What's his name?
Steve Hassen.
So Steve Hassan claims that this is one of the most destructive cults in history. I thought that was a pretty profound statement.
The book that he wrote that's been used quite a bit to show the destructive tactics of cults is called Combating Cult Mind Control. And it came out in the late 80s.
I should read that.
Mm-hmm.
In with the lies, there's so much scamming that seems to go on because they, what is the word? Tout?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the word?
Sure.
They toot.
They're doing a lot of tooting over there.
They're doing a lot of tooting. They tout that he was so smart.
4 degrees or some shit.
Yeah. Like, credited with being a business genius.
All from his own self. There's no accreditation to prove any of this.
No, every business he had failed.
What was the one in the early 90s?
Oh, it was called Consumer Byline.
Yeah. That was a public, huge failure. I believe there were lawsuits and stuff tied to that. I don't understand how he was involved in something like that was so blatantly a scam and then managed to be this successful.
Well, who does that sound like? Joseph Smith was obviously so blatantly involved in magic.
Yeah.
And treasure hunting.
But that was the early 1800s. Not even one knew. Most people didn't know that about him when he kept moving from town to town.
True, but most of these cult members didn't know about.
But they could if they would have looked into it for themselves because it was on TV. That's the thing about Joseph Smith is he's one of the last, you can call him successful cult leaders that can hide behind the veil of mystery because there's no footage of him, sound of him.
That's so true.
The clearest real photo we have of him isn't even a photo.
Yeah. That's so creepy. Oh my God.
People like L. Ron Hubbard, you can watch 30 seconds of that guy. And if you are not already, if you didn't grow up in it or somehow become sucked in by the materials before you knew who he was, you only have to see him a brief time to be certain that he's full of shit.
And listening to that series on
Marshall Applewhite.
That series on Heaven's Gate. Just hearing his voice, he is so creepy.
Yeah.
His voice is it's just terrifying.
Yeah. Tea and dough.
Oh, God. So, yeah.
The next level beyond human.
So, yes, Consumer Byline. In college, he was on probation several times, and his GPA on his college transcript was only a 2.26, which is barely a C.
You could hear him speak and kind of go along with the fact that he seemed to know what he was talking about.
Sure, but no more than anyone else.
Not really. I mean, you would see him like writing a bunch of math-ish on the board, but is anyone checking his work? Like,
exactly.
What is he even doing?
It's like that expo marker on the glass window or something, like, and all of the equations running through your mind.
Working out the whole universe right here, right now.
I just go on walks and I just problem solve, and I just walk all night, and I'm a genius. I just look so smart.
Yeah.
So, in similarity with Joseph Smith, in the 80s, was it that he created Consumer Byline?
I think it was the late 80s, early 90s.
Late 80s. Self-improvement was really popular.
Mm-hmm.
And when he met Nancy Salzman, he had failed miserably.
Yeah.
And he got together with her and saw it as an opportunity to create another business that would play on this surge of self-improvement.
Yeah.
So that's when they created executive success programs.
On that point, that's when Dianetics saw a resurgence in popularity. So they were advertising
in Scientology.
It usually wasn't advertised as a Scientology book. It was advertised as the key to improving your whole life and bettering yourself. Yeah.
Dianetics.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it was published in like 1950, but I remember seeing commercials for it in the early 90s.
Right. And just like self-improvement was popular then, religious fervor was popular when Joseph Smith was growing up. That's how these ideas get planted in their heads. It's a trend in the culture. Joseph Smith took this as an opportunity to write the Book of Mormon, to start, arguably, a new religion. Not that he really knew what he was doing at the time. But what's that guy's name again? Steve
Steve Hassan, yes.
So Steve Hassan said that, it's common that the leader cobbles together ideas, copies from other sources. They're not original thinkers. They have a superiority complex. And so the sources that NXIVM cobbled together from were MLMs, namely Scientology.
There's a lot of that dish.
Yeah. Ayn Rand, her book on objectives, getting what you want, self-centered bullshit. And then NLP, which is what Nancy Salzman had taught before. Neuro-linguistic programming, which is basically just talking in a really nice voice to get people to respond to what you're saying.
Yeah.
So that they will believe you and they will feel really good.
And I think she talked about this because I think she was involved in it. It's fairly hypnotic.
Yeah, she also taught hypnosis, and she said, if anyone knew that I taught hypnosis, what would they say? Like trying to play it off as, I'm not crazy.
Yeah. I'm not tricking you.
No, never. I'm not just translating skills that I learned somewhere else to manipulate you. Also, it never got brought up to his followers that Raniere was already charged with child molestation of a 12-year-old. Just before we even get going.
Let's just put that on the table.
Right out of the gate. Steve Hassen. Is that his name?
Are you kidding?
I seriously cannot remember.
Steven Hassen.
Steven Hassen. Are you kidding me right now? Steve Hassen. Okay, Steve Hassen. Steven Hassen?
Yes.
Do you mind if I call you Steve? So Steven.
Well, Stevie boy.
So Mr. Harvin.
What is happening?
Hassan. So Steven Hassen was saying that, like many cult leaders, Keith used women as an extension of his needs for power and control. That he was an insecure, narcissistic, malignant personality.
Yeah.
He wanted to have power at every level, and that included government, which also sounds like Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
Because he was projecting his idea of what this was going to become into, we're going to change the presidential vote.
Yeah.
We're going to have that much power.
He tried to become president, which I can't believe I never knew.
That he actually campaigned.
Yeah.
How did he even have that much money?
What do you mean?
Joseph Smith.
He had every member of the church's money at his disposal.
Yeah. Well, All right. I think that's all I have on the scamming front.
Plenty of scams.
Lots of scamming. Let's move on to India.
Mm-hmm.
Herself, like we said, she was in NXIVM for 7 years. She went...
Young girl at the time. I think
she
was
went
19.
into it at 19, yes.
Eey.
I left for my mission at 19.
Right.
I turned 20 in the MTC. Very young, very impressionable. Brains not yet fully developed.
Mm-hmm.
I understand how this happened to her.
Oh, yeah. Her, I can understand. She was one of the youngest people in it. Most of the people were like in their 30s and 40s, it seemed like.
Exactly.
Objectively not stupid people.
No. And they use celebrities to say, these people have done the thinking for you. It's good enough for them.
A la Scientology.
We've used the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
That
was a complete manipulation.
Allison Mack. Jennifer Aniston has allegedly taken classes. Like,
Prove
what?
it.
Okay. We showed a picture of her. Apparently, she's part of it. Like, what? They use that tactic as a way to lure people in, to get you to trust them, to legitimize what they're doing. I connected that to Mormon prophets, Mormon apostles. They did the thinking so that you don't have to look at these brilliant men. How could you not believe if it's good enough for them, it should be good enough for you?
Yeah.
And also at some level, it's almost like you have local fame. Like every ward has its own, this is the elite family. Mm-hmm. If it's good enough for them, it should be good enough for you. If she believes it, then I believe it.
Yeah. They have a big, happy family.
Exactly. They have 7 children.
Mm-hmm. And all of them have 6 or 7 children as well.
Clearly, they did it right.
Yeah.
And there is a level of Mormon royalty, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. People love finding out which known person is Mormon.
Exactly.
Even if they aren't anymore. Like, they touted the Osmonds for a long time. They were not good Mormons.
Yeah, when you watch Mormon stories, guests will frequently comment, I was in the heart of the famous Mormon circles or whatever have you in Utah, in California, on the East Coast, these really rich families that have clout and renown in what they think is the whole world, but like only their universe. The small fame that you grew up idolizing in people. You don't question it if you think, oh, this person up here in my head on this pedestal, they buy in.
I mean, who's bigger in your world when you're a kid than your parents?
Or your youth leader.
Secondarily.
Yeah.
But you can have very influential people in your life in that circle. But if your parents say, all I want is to give you the best life possible and never lead you astray, this is the way to go. Trust me.
India goes to a couple classes with her mom, and they tell her things like, you get to choose how you want to feel.
Mm-hmm.
Do you?
Do you?
Do you, though? But she thinks, wow, this is great. I could be successful. I could have a career. They can teach me how to use my skills to help me find success, to conquer my fears, to become my own person, when she's kind of grown up in the shadow of her mom's success. So you can see how she was lured in. But it was expensive. And part of the thing that I related to is that when she first went to those classes, they separated her from her mom. And they said that was normal because having a family member there would, cloud your perspective and not allow you to be honest.
Listen, the brainwashing isn't going to work if we don't break you up.
If you're too attached.
Yeah.
So they're already controlling your life.
Yeah.
And that reminded me of when I would send emails home on my preparation day on my mission. And if I was emailing too instantly, almost like a direct message, like I would send an email home and someone would see that I had just sent it, and they would kind of hop online and send me a message, and then I would respond. You weren't allowed to talk that directly. If you were sending emails too instantaneously, that was a problem.
What?
If you were using it like a direct messenger system. And just like India would have to send journal entries to her master, which we'll get to that whole master-slave dynamic. On your iPad, when I was on my mission, I had an iPad, and I would have to give it to my quote-unquote superior. The sister training leader that was supposedly in charge of me would look through my iPad frequently. Like, you had to turn in your device for them to make sure that you were not using it for anything inappropriate. And they would look through my emails and just to see how quickly I was sending them.
What the
That kind of surveillance over my activity that way.
And those iPads had like proprietary software on them, right?
I think so, yeah. I couldn't just look up anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, they would check our iPads regularly. So there was really no privacy. Like, they'd look through your photos. They'd look through all of that kind of correspondence.
You had to turn over your own property to be inspected.
Yeah. Like, during weekly meetings, there was a portion of time reserved for iPad checks, which is what we called them.
Wow.
And at some point, I was doing that too. I was the person who was supposed to inspect other people's devices. Super weird.
Yeah.
Her mom said that she had an EM with Nancy Salzman that was kind of a breakthrough for her.
What does EM stand for?
It stands for Exploration of Meaning.
Okay. So that is similar to Scientology.
Yes. India's mom said that after she had her conversation with Nancy Salzman, who was only there because they wanted to recruit India and her mom.
Oh, yeah.
She said that an EM like that was the equivalent of 10 years of therapy in 10 minutes, which I thought was a really funny statement. The thing that I related this to in Mormonism is the private interviews. There's no set psychological conversation going on necessarily.
Not that either of them are aware of.
Right. There is a set of questions.
Yeah.
For
questions
sure.
that they're not coming up with, usually. Depends on who your bishop is.
Yeah.
They might get creative.
Right.
But usually these are scripts.
Yeah. And
And
the answers are generally yes or no.
Yeah.
Unless you've done something wrong,
But
and then you need to specify.
These questions are presented for a reason. There definitely is a thought process above the bishop for how this is done and what the purpose is.
Right. And it's not meant to get you to think deeply about your spirituality. It's to get you to...
Yeah, that's really not what they want you to do.
No, they're getting you to sift through your memories to see if you've done anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what vocabulary word I'm trying to think of, but like they're just trying to elicit a sin. Just combing through with these questions.
Yeah.
If you pass, you pass. If not,
you got
work to do.
Some repenting to do.
Yeah. And eventually India says, you're EMing yourself. Eventually you get so conditioned to the point where you're putting yourself through this process of scrutiny and evaluation. And that's how I felt about prayer and scripture study. Like eventually it got to the point where I was having this check-in about where I was covenant keeping wise every day. You become your own monitor. But the scary part is that these people aren't professional therapists. In this cult, they were not. In the Mormon religion, they are not. On the expensive note, the Mormon church is definitely expensive.
Yeah.
Tithing is very expensive.
You're not paying a chunk, this doesn't cost this much. It's just 10% of everything.
Blanket 10% of your increase.
Yeah, of your increase.
Yeah. Missions are expensive, like we mentioned.
Yeah.
There's so much free labor for the church.
Oh, boy.
And they save so much money for having members volunteer to do so much shit, even down to yard work at the temple, keeping the grounds.
And cleaning the buildings. They used to pay people to do that. They don't anymore.
Nope.
Because we got all this free labor.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, there would be people that would do the landscaping around the church building. But at a certain point that stopped. And then they would ask for routine volunteers to come and clean the bathrooms and the buildings and all of that. And of course, if you're righteous, you're going to come in and you're going to vacuum that damn carpet. Okay? And at a certain point, you have to imagine that how much you've paid has to keep you in. Just like that woman on NXIVM who was like, I took out $50,000 loans to keep taking these higher, more intensive courses. And you get yourself so into debt. Yeah.
And in Scientology, it's like you are intensely pressured to do that.
To take more and more classes.
Do you have a credit card?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Let's use it.
Well.
What's it worth to you? You want to be clear? You want to clear this planet?
You want to be clear?
Well, I know you've taken all these courses, but we've actually revamped them. And we have a whole new set of books that you are going to need to buy and do it all over.
Oh, my God. That is infuriating.
Yeah. How many sets of scriptures have you acquired in your life?
Right? Those are not cheap.
Subscriptions to the New Era, Friend, Ensign.
Church manuals and materials. The first 5-day course reminded me of the first 3 discussions as, what you teach as a Mormon missionary. The restoration is the first lesson. The first lesson is the first lesson, which is like the what. This is the message. The second one is the plan of salvation, which is the why. And then the third one is the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is the how. And that's what gets people sucked in, because we're not getting into any of the freaky stuff.
No.
We're getting into the Christian stuff.
But it does start with Joseph Smith.
Absolutely. You better believe it. The next part I took notes on is normalizing things that seem strange. From the very beginning, like we said, kissing on the mouth.
Yeah.
How much it costs, being separated from your family, from India's perspective. And they as in the leaders, the teachers, the coaches, will specifically address things that might come up later so as to preemptively normalize them so that they don't raise any red flags when they actually come up. So that instead of what's wrong with them, you're asking what's wrong with me, that I don't find this appropriate or okay, or it doesn't make sense. Why do I find that I have an issue with Keith kissing me on the lips?
Yeah.
What do I need? Yeah, what do I need to sort out? about how,
How this makes
vulnerable
me feel.
and open I am about things like this.
It's Vanguard.
So pucker up. Jesus Christ. All we are saying is give Keith a chance.
So gross.
That is a real song.
That is a real song.
That is a real gross song. I think that they were singing that during a quote-unquote V week, which stands for Vanguard, like celebrating his birthday or something. One of the other women in the documentary that was talking about patterns of cults said, this is what they do to get you so excited and amped up and push you when you're on a high to go to the next level. This is when you sign up to take more courses, get more involved. I need more of this. And that reminded me of when you're on a mission and you're teaching an investigator and you use the opportunity when you see them having a spiritual experience or something to invite them to be baptized. That you capitalize on that momentum emotionally to push them to take the next step that will ultimately lead to your success as a missionary.
And money.
And money.
Tithing money.
In the same vein as, high energy, these high arousal techniques, they keep you busy all the time during this V week, like camp. You have no time to yourself. It's an addiction mechanism that kicks in so that you come back and get more. And that reminded me of so many things in Mormonism from a very young age. I have an entire list here of all the activities that they've implemented to keep every member at any age engaged multiple times during the week and the year. You have normal church services, including sacrament meeting, Relief Society, priesthood. But within Relief Society, you have visiting teaching, which happens at least every month, or it's on your to-do list. You have your priesthood quorums, which also require work outside of church to keep up with that and those callings. You have seminary and institute, which keep you kind of sleep deprived because you're up super early and up super late. You have mutual on whatever day of the week that is in the evening, which can take hours.
Yeah, Wednesday nights were pretty lame.
I hated it so much. It was so boring. The temple.
Oh, boy.
Big time suck. BYU. If you go to college at a church university, there's so much shit you have to do outside of your normal curricular studies. Missions. A year and a half or 2 years straight of time gone.
Literally all of it.
Ward parties, programs, holidays. Not only the time you have to spend at those events, but the planning that it takes up until those things happen. Baptisms. Couple hours on a weekend. Scouting.
Yep.
Merit badge ceremonies, campouts.
Can confirm.
Good Lord. Getting your Eagle Scout award.
Yep.
Service.
Yep.
All the callings and auxiliaries that are up and running in the church. There was youth camp.
Yeah.
That I went to every summer.
There was girls camp and then boys did scout camp.
Yeah. And just like control of technology with NXIVM, you weren't allowed to bring your cell phone. You weren't allowed to bring any technology. I had a disposable camera. That was it.
I always had a Walkman or my Discman.
Oh, you had to hide that shit.
Really?
Yeah. It was a big deal.
Huh.
I snuck my phone one year.
Imagine that. There's differences between the boys and girls and the way they're treated.
Weird. I was in middle school and I was so attached to my phone. It felt like ripping out my heart to leave it behind.
Oh, yeah. This was a Boy Scout camp, not a church camp specifically.
Yeah. Oh, believe me.
Yeah.
Not to mention another extremely time-sucking activity is personal study. You're supposed to be praying and reading your scriptures.
Not me.
Nuh-uh. And, I mean, obviously every member is a missionary, so you are supposed to be recruiting the hell out of all your friends. But they don't get a commission like they did in NXIVM.
No, you just get a pat on the back.
Yeah. The NXIVM version of Relief Society was Jeunesse. And their version of priesthood was SOP, which is Society of Protectors.
Right. Oh, gosh. So dumb.
Jeunesse was a women's educational program, and Nancy Salzman was quoted as saying, "It's the first women's organization that was started by a man." And it's like, no, it wasn't. at all.
Like, I don't even need to look into that.
I don't even need to look
true.
into it, but no, it wasn't. I mean, I think members like to think that it was like Emma's idea or something to start the Relief Society, but it was definitely...
No, it was just a job that was given to her.
Yeah, it was definitely Joseph just being like, hey, do this.
Yeah, you're important too.
The other thing I wanted to mention after that 5-day course, and they would get you while you're having a high emotional experience and get you to enroll in more classes.
Get you whipped up.
Get you whisked away into the next set of things. At the end of girls' camp, there was always a testimony meeting.
Oh, yeah.
To get you to feel something emotional after this week where you haven't had that much sleep, you've been constantly busy. And they have that when you're the most vulnerable. And you just think it's a tidy way to wrap up the experience. But that's when they really get you.
It's like an imprinting. I remember after that, some young women would go up and give talks following Young Women's Week and then tell stories about their experiences. And a lot of it would revolve around testimonies given at the end. And then there'd be a lot of tears. That's
pretty much all it was. Just because they're so tired.
If you're not crying, I don't know if I really believe you.
I don't. The SOP, the Society of Protectors, was scary to think about where Keith was going with that whole program. Because it was very violent and it was very military-like.
Yeah.
And it was almost like he was preparing to weaponize his followers when the time came.
Ugh.
Because he was so obsessed with, you need to sacrifice yourself. You need to completely submit and be obedient to this cause and to me.
Yeah, but why?
Yeah, but why? Like we were talking about with his whole weirdly graphic examples of...
Talking a lot about rape.
Abuse and rape. He said it was often that they had children with adults, speaking of Greek society.
Oh, yeah.
Having a type of sexual apprenticeship. This was common. You know, often you'll have a person who was, we'll call it, quote, abused by a father. There's one instance I know in particular, and the girl really loved it, enjoyed it. There wasn't a single part of it she didn't like until she recognized by society that it was abuse. So who abused who?
What?
Blurring the line between rape and consent.
Yeah.
Just completely muddling the waters for the people listening to him.
You know, I've seen a lot of that in like the online Christian community of people who are evangelical and talking about the role of women and the role of men. And there's a lot of this like submissiveness that is necessary and basically give it up when he wants it. And like a wife cannot be raped by her husband.
No.
Okay.
It's on your head. Okay.
Yeah.
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 That's basically all SOP
you don't have a choice.
And Jeunesse were. We're indoctrinating roles of men and women. Keith Raniere's specific ideas of what men and women's roles were. And the cult experts said he was a psychopath. He was a narcissist who wanted his own personal harem of sex slaves. And he desensitized...
Quite
literally. The first line of DOS slaves, especially. And then from there on out...
What did DOS
stand, that was the whole goal. I don't remember exactly, but it's Latin for master-slave relationship.
Oh, right.
He wanted his own personal harem of sex slaves, and he desensitized people so that they could do horrific things without even questioning their actions. Slowly but surely. And you rise up in these ranks, but like, what is ultimately the goal for these people who are
I was just going to ask
paying
that. Like,
money?
what's the end game? What are you working towards?
What do they think they're working towards?
Right.
He knows what he wants them to work towards, but what do you think you're getting out of this?
At some point, have you improved yourself and that's it? Or then you just start teaching other people this stuff?
Basically.
You eventually do have that role of coaching other people.
Yeah, and they talked about that a lot because it was like the victims became the victimizers without even knowing what they were doing. It was completely unintentional. And that's why India would say, you know, I was feeling like I would get a little further. I would progress a little, but then I just felt like I was stalling and I wasn't getting anywhere. Then Allison Mack swoops in and says, this is what's going to help you. DOS is going to take you to the next level.
You think this is good? Check this out. And it's very special.
It's so special I can't tell you anything about it until you give me very damning evidence.
Until you completely commit yourself sight unseen to do whatever I want.
And give me collateral. And that's how they make you feel like the cult solves your problem even though they created the problem.
Mm-hmm.
They extend the hand to pull you out of what they put you into.
Yep.
And that's how I felt on my mission. Because you're told if you follow all the rules, you'll have all the success. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And the culture in sister missionaries is just so toxic.
I can imagine.
And we can get into that. I think there was something, just part of DOS, the master slave sorority, the achieving of goals in every category, especially your weight, was a part of the DOS curriculum. There was calorie restriction, a lot of fasting.
Severe calorie restriction, like very unhealthy.
Yeah, to the point that they didn't menstruate for years. On the mission, your time is so scheduled that you don't really have time to eat a lot of the time. And that's a similarity, is not that you have to report the number of calories you're intaking, but just that if you take the time to sit down and eat, that you should feel guilty about losing that time. That you could have been saving souls.
That is the Lord's time.
Absolutely. And you must be tracking, you must be contacting. And if you're hungry, then, too bad. You should be eating the spirit, okay?
Should be full of the spirit.
The control of sleep in DOS was also a factor.
Yeah.
Extremely sleep deprived. And on the mission, you're only allowed to get 8 hours of sleep. And if I just go to sleep and don't wake up, I get 9.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I don't wake up and ever, but like if I just let myself go to sleep without setting an alarm, my body likes 9 hours of sleep. I was so fucking tired on my mission. You aren't allowed to go to sleep before your companion. You have to go to sleep at the same time and you have to get up at the same time.
But what if you don't go to sleep? What if you can't?
You just have to be in bed.
Right.
But you can't be in the same bed.
No.
No. No. It is lights out at 10:30 and it is lights on at 6:30.
Yeah.
And if you're really righteous, you get out of bed at 6:20 so that you can get ready to exercise before you actually start exercising at 6:30.
Wow.
Yeah. Like you are in at 9, you plan from 9 to 9:30, you have from 9:30 to 10:30 to get ready for bed and to journal and to pray your ass off. And then you get in your fucking bed, okay? And shut your eyes.
Shut your eyes.
And then you'd be so stressed about what you had to do the next day that you couldn't fall asleep because your brain was just constantly on. And then you get like no actual rest because you're so stressed out all the time. And if you wake up late, then you're going to have to repent. No idea.
How many baptisms did you have?
Like 2?
Yeah. In a year and a half.
Yeah. And that's the whole achieving goals, reporting to your mission president, actually journaling to him. Like you have to write your mission president an email every week in addition to the letter you send home to your family about your progress and how you're doing. And the culture of self-berating among sister missionaries was astounding. If you were not raking yourself over the coals internally, there was something wrong with you. I think I knew one sister missionary that wasn't like that. And I really thought that she was disobedient. That she should be disciplined for being normal and talking to me about music that she liked to listen to.
Wow.
Like in her normal life.
Worldly.
I know. It's like, is your heart even in this?
Jeez.
It was so toxic. And I still find myself reverting to that pattern of thought sometimes, that you always have to be busy, that you always have to be clean and organized and doing things and checking things off your to-do list.
Yeah, you make a lot of lists.
And being as productive as possible. I do make so many lists. There's probably not a day that goes by that I don't make a list of what I want to do, or what I need to buy, or what I need to clean, or what my schedule for work is.
Yeah.
Or what I want to watch.
Someday I'll check it all off and then I'll be happy.
And then I'll be happy when I check off all my boxes, which is never going to happen.
No.
But you've given collateral.
Yeah. So in case anyone hasn't watched that or doesn't understand what that is, at the beginning of this master-slave relationship, you would have to give over some sort of collateral that you would not want to be released so that you could be committed to
just to get information.
Yeah. To even know what you're committing to.
About
like a
the
naked
sorority.
photo or information about your family, secrets that would be weaponized against you if you were to
share the secret.
Blab about it.
And the thing that I compare that to in the Mormon religion is the temple ritual.
Of course.
The covenants and the penalties.
Yep.
If you share this sacred information, may your navel be split and your tongue be ripped out from its roots.
That is so violent.
Good Lord. I mean...
Throat cut from ear to ear.
I mean, I never had to divulge personal secrets or anything that went on
Besides
file, but
your own to your bishop.
Also that was the other thing I thought of.
In order to go to the temple.
Yeah. Divulging your innermost embarrassing actions just so that you are cleared to go and participate in this ritual where you then consent to give your whole life.
Yeah. Everything.
One of the things that India would say a lot is, if you aren't uncomfortable, then you're not growing. And that was drilled into us as missionaries. If you are not stepping outside of your comfort zone, if you are not talking to every single person that you see on the street, you are not doing your job.
Yeah.
And the Lord will not bless you, and their salvation is on your head.
Yep.
You know how stressful that is?
I can imagine, but thankfully, no, I don't.
But you're sacrificing for a greater cause.
The greatest.
Which is why you need to give ultimate obedience, your lifetime commitment, all your time and talents, and in NXIVM, becoming a slave. Literally.
If you're a thin, attractive woman.
Yes. With money.
Yes.
And if Keith wants to have sex with you.
Yep.
Which is part of the seduction title. Every member of DOS at some point is assigned to have sexual contact with Keith. I never had sexual abuse experiences with bishops or members of higher authority. But I can imagine that the experience that India shares is similar to what that must be like.
Yeah.
To feel as though you have that sense of obligation to someone above you. That somehow it's the right
that
thing to do.
That you admire or you trust.
Yeah. And she describes feeling like she was in an altered state. That she was kind of frozen. And that probably doesn't hit you until much later. The gravity of that situation. Outside of DOS, people had breakdowns mentally. It talked about several people who were escorted out. It was all very hush-hush because they're losing their minds. That reminded me of missionaries that go home early.
Yeah.
When I was on my mission, there were several people who you heard through the grapevine had left, but you didn't know why. You weren't really supposed to talk about it. It was their fault.
Definitely.
They did something wrong.
Porn.
Probably. And you were just supposed to forget about it. Sweep it under the rug.
Yeah.
Have I talked too much yet?
No.
I just have a few more things.
Okay.
Just in general, questioning was discouraged. You're living in a world of fear because of the collateral that you've given over. You feel like you can't say no. And then you're asked to recruit more people into this thing that's ruining your life. Which, in Mormonism, you're living in fear of the possibility that God will punish you for breaking the commandments. And obviously, questioning is not ideal.
No, the thinking has been done. The fear that if you aren't keeping up, then you're going to end up not with the rest of your family if they are more righteous than you.
Exactly. That's a big fear. Is it's not just you that you're taking down.
Yeah. And if you fail to get your kids and your family to follow, then you're not going to have them. And that's failure on your part.
It's all your fault.
Which is really horrific to think of the possibility that anyone thinks that about us, that they're a failure because we are not on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
Unquote.
I really don't want that
it's,
to be a reality.
And I hope it's not, but that is the prevailing idea, that they're supposed to believe that, really.
Yeah.
But if they knew how much better my life is, because I'm not in this rat race, if they could really truly understand it, they should be proud of themselves and happy for me.
Exactly. You are supposed to enroll your own slave at some point. So India's asked, you need to enroll a few more people to be your slave. And that reminded me of being asked to train a new sister missionary.
Yeah.
Someone who had never had another companion besides the MTC, who I was supposed to help adhere to every mission rule, just like my trainer did.
Yeah.
You're the first line of, this is what my mission's going to be like. This is what's expected from here on out. It was terrible. I hated it. It was really hard and really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There's the branding.
There's that.
Which, the ceremony in and of itself, they say things like, your greatest joy is to surrender completely in all things, in all ways. I surrender my life, mind, body, and possessions for unconditional use.
Ugh.
I mean, in not so many words, that's what you're saying at the temple.
Yeah.
All your time, talents, possessions. It's total consecration.
Yeah, and the branding is somehow, the design is both Keith Raniere's initials and Allison Mack's.
So gross. Which reminded me of, in a less painful version, of wearing garments.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Because it's not Jesus's initials, but it's definitely symbols of every knee shall bow, every tongue shall...
Sorry?
Every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess that Jesus is the Christ. And it's a constant reminder that is uncomfortable. Garments don't require a cauterizing pen.
Yeah.
But they are something that you have to wear every moment of every day from the day you start wearing them.
From what I hear, they're not very comfortable or
They
practical.
They are not practical.
They remind you of your commitment.
It's a sign. The covenant that you made while you were in the Garden of Eden.
While you were watching a movie.
And you think it's perfectly logical and reasonable that you're being asked to wear this fabric.
Yeah.
You think it's
for your own good.
Perfectly logical and reasonable that you would be getting branded with a cauterizing pen by someone who doesn't know how to do this for 30 minutes. Naked while you're being filmed.
Wow.
And that's being sent to the leader of this cult.
Yeah.
And he had everything to do with this ceremony. And what it symbolized and what they would say.
Yep.
And their posture. And their lack of clothing. I wanted to talk about defecting. What India said about how she felt like she lost herself. And then just some questions I have. And that's it.
Okay.
With the defecting, India's mom said a lot of people started to leave after the DOS information was released, and she kept thinking, why isn't India leaving? And then she realized, she had been in this for so much longer from such a young age.
Yeah.
Much more vulnerable. And those who stayed were told just what Mormons are told when apostates leave. What are Mormons told?
Oh, they wanted to sin.
Yeah. They were weak.
Or they were offended.
Those who stayed were told not to believe what was posted online about accusations of Keith and DOS. That those who stayed were the true believers, that it was a test for them to show how much they cared and how much they believed in Keith.
Yeah.
That they were the special, the chosen ones. I mean, that's what I was told from birth, was that I'm a Latter-day Saint. I am the strongest of the strong. I'm the bravest of the brave. I'm the most valiant of the valiant
You
because
have been saved for these latter days.
This is the end of the world. This decade.
You may even see the second coming in your lifetime.
Exactly. I was told that so often.
Pretty much everyone since the beginning of this church has been told that.
Jesus Christ.
They expected it to happen in the 1800s.
When all of that was coming out and they started to pursue Keith legally, he fled to Mexico.
Yep.
Just like Mormon leaders did when they were being the whole polygamy scandal.
When polygamy was necessarily shut down, people fled to where they could practice it.
What is it about Mexico?
I don't know. But there are still Mormon polygamists down there.
For real?
Yeah. A bunch of them got killed accidentally. A cartel thought that they were, I think, another rival cartel, and a bunch of them were killed. It was like over a year ago.
That's it?
Yeah.
I had no idea. But of course, the narrative is that everyone else has a vendetta against this good leader for all of his works, but he has a PR team ready to disarm these claims. One of the things that they said in the documentary was through indoctrination, you lose your critical thinking abilities and you don't really know who yourself is anymore. And they're creating a new self for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that scared me a lot. And I thought about how there were so many people that wanted to get India out, but she couldn't or wouldn't hear them.
Mm-hmm. Well, in many ways, she was physically restricted from being able to.
Don't go home, don't talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they cared about her, but through that alienation, she completely lost touch with who she was. And like Allison Mack, she didn't know who she was outside of being a performer her entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And Keith totally exploited that because she was just his puppet.
Yeah.
And I feel really bad for her because, like, yeah, it doesn't seem like she had a lot of remorse for what she was doing.
Mm-mm.
And she was a tactical leader in a lot of this. But still, like...
Yeah, her... Again, it was his initials and hers.
It was. I just can't help but feel like, since she was a child, she's totally been filled with ideas of how important she is.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I don't feel like she was ever really given a chance because then this really manipulative guy paid attention to her and used her and then, again, weaponized her against or for his cause.
Mm-hmm.
And as a victim, she became a victimizer. And she is charged with being the leading influence in victimizing others. But still, it makes me sad because just like India talks about, she felt like she lost herself because she believed that what she was doing was good for her.
Yeah, I mean, something was definitely done to her, but in turn, she did a lot.
Luckily, India didn't get to the point where her slaves got involved to the degree that she did. They left before she did, and they didn't get branded, and she was never in a position to be charged criminally the way that other people were, luckily.
Yeah.
She talked about how her sexual experiences with Keith didn't ever feel good.
Mm-hmm.
That they were not sexual but manipulative, is what her therapist said. And I worry that that's what a lot of Mormon marriages turn into. That they're not sexual, they're manipulative because they get married not for love, but for obligation. And at some point, that attraction has to die out when they aren't meeting each other's needs. And a woman cannot be feeling sexual pleasure in that situation,
Mm-hmm.
And if they are legally and covenantly bound to only have sex with each other, like that's terrifying for their entire lives. And if you're not, then you're sinning because you're supposed to multiply and replenish the earth.
Right.
And I worry about my friends who have gotten married
very young,
with really no information about sex at all. I had to explain to them what sex was, how it worked, and I hadn't even had sex yet. We're having really basic conversations.
Wow.
And I was super worried for them. And almost all of them are married. And I just hope that they're okay.
Yeah.
She felt like she was the screwed up one in that situation, India, that there was something wrong with her for not enjoying this experience.
Right.
And she said that she would get this massive ball of pain in her chest, which felt like a shaky thing right around her chest, around her lower ribs, that it made her sad that she was ignoring her body's own warning system, that it was trying to tell her this is not a good situation, subconsciously.
Yeah.
Even if she felt like this is what she was supposed to do, that it was actually harmful. And that made me really sad because I thought about how I was falling apart on my mission.
Yeah.
My hair was falling out. I was so unhealthy. I was so upset. I was so depressed. And I felt like I couldn't be honest about that because it was supposed to be the best time of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And if I felt like I wasn't on a spiritual high, that was my fault.
There's a prescription for what this experience is supposed to be. And if you're not having that experience, that's on you.
Yeah. And I convinced myself so much that this was such a great opportunity and that I would never be as happy as I was then.
Yeah.
But I was crying myself to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't want anyone to feel like they have to do that because my body was telling me this is not good for you.
I remember the tone of your communication changed pretty quickly in your emails and stuff.
Yeah, just like India's mom said when she would
know
send...
what to say a lot of the time.
Exactly. because I was glazed over.
That's actually what it read like. When you would type him and you would capitalize H
Yes.
when you're talking about
Yes.
Heavenly Father.
Absolutely.
It's like, okay.
And I
guess she's really into this.
That's what I wrote down. That India's mom would say, the video she would send home, she just looked disconnected.
Yeah.
And I said, that must be how my emails sounded.
Oh, yeah.
That I was on another planet.
And I just knew you were fairly unreachable. So I wasn't really sure I couldn't relate to anything that you were talking about.
My emails turned from personal experiences to spewing doctrine.
Yep.
Scriptures, quotes from prophets and apostles, bearing my testimony that I know that Jesus Christ is the Lord and Joseph Smith was his prophet.
Those emails are still somewhere.
Oh, they definitely are. And I remember writing with all fervence, if that is even a word, that I would live my entire life until my dying day defending Joseph Smith as the prophet of God.
Wow.
Yeah. That I was like, I know more than I know anything that this is true.
And how could that possibly be true? How could you know that?
Because I was supposed to know that. Because your greatest joy is to surrender completely.
Yeah, but I mean, how telling is it that you feel the need more so to specify that much, that your faith in Joseph Smith rather than Jesus Christ?
Absolutely. I was like, you know what? I'm right. And that's all that matters. Ugh. Yeah, I started writing like I was writing for a Mormon textbook or something. 3 questions.
For me?
Yes. And we've talked about these and I know what you're going to say, but...
Okay.
Question 1. If Mormons heard recordings of Joseph Smith himself admitting fraud, would they disbelieve him then?
Most of them would not.
Why?
Because that is so core to their salvation that they desperately want, that they would rather keep believing that than actually... I mean, there's just no way that they'd be convinced, even if he said it himself, which has been demonstrated by the living prophet of the fundamental Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Warren Jeffs, who is currently in prison and will be till he dies, for doing the same shit Joseph Smith did. He is on video telling his brother,
Nephi,
I believe his name is Nephi, which is hilarious, that he was not a prophet, that he did not talk to God, that it was a lie, and then they shouldn't believe in him. And what did his brother say? No, of course you're the prophet. No, you don't know what you're saying. No, you are. And if I could find that clip, I'll put that in here too.
I'm not the prophet. I never was the prophet. And I have been deceived by the powers of evil. I am sorry from the bottom of my heart. The Lord whispers to me to have you, Nephi, send this message. They will see that I voice these words myself. Farewell forever, you who are worthy, for Zion, for I will not be there. Yes, you will.
You telling me that was the first I've ever heard of it.
Which I believe he has since recanted that. But
Warren Jeffs?
Yeah. Because basically, he can't.
It's gone too far.
Absolutely.
It's out of his hands.
What could Joseph Smith have done, even if he was convinced that, even if he really believed in God and that he would be judged for what he was doing, and the only way to absolve himself was to repent and tell everybody it wasn't what I said it was, he would be either not believed, and to those who believed that, he would have been murdered.
And he was.
And he was, but there was just no way that he could come clean.
Yeah. People had already spun their own narratives.
Oh, yeah.
Off of the narrative he spun.
And his survival depended on him perpetuating the fraud.
You've already answered my second question, which is, would Joseph Smith be in jail today?
Yeah.
I mean, he was in jail when he died.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least he was being held
He
there.
was jailed several times.
Yeah. Lots of charges were brought against him.
But again, if he was living today under this society where, just like the NXIVM cult, just like the Branch Davidians, just like Heaven's Gate, for some reason they document everything, it would eventually, his crimes would be known. I know people, especially believing members, would find it hard to believe. But the fundamental LDS Church is much more like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that Joseph Smith was the head of than the LDS Church is now.
Yeah.
And Warren Jeffs is literally in jail for doing the same stuff Joseph Smith did.
Honestly, if you asked Mom who Warren Jeffs is,
Probably
she
doesn't
wouldn't
know.
be able to tell you. I didn't know who he was until you showed me a documentary about
Mm-hmm.
the LDS Church. Gross.
Ew.
At the end, several of the women share their experiences with students studying law. And the question I asked myself, like them, is how do I use this experience to help others? What can I do to help, if anything? And I just wanted to tell you thank you for providing this platform for us to be able to talk about our experiences. Because I feel like that's all I really can do at this point.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be able to do that without you. So, thank you.
Absolutely. I'm really glad that we get to do this and that.
It was your idea, if you remember.
Yeah. But I couldn't do it without you either.
Right. And that question was my last question. If there's anything else, what can we do to help others? Leaving Mormonism and other cult scenarios.
Right. There's so many ways in which people are trying to share their story, and how effective that is to others and to them depends on the interaction and response that they get from it. So, not that you need to positively reinforce everyone giving honest praise and admiration when you really feel it could go a long way.
That's a good point. I could be more actively engaged that way, online and otherwise. Sometimes I read books like Educated by Tara Westover and I think, oh, I'd really like to tell her how much that meant to me. But at that point, she's had enough of that.
Sure.
To get her voice to the point where it's a legitimate.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking about the people who are sending out a tweet today saying that, whatever struggle that they're having, because especially when you're young and you're not yet independent or capable of being independent.
Yeah.
You can feel like a prisoner, even in your own home, doing things you absolutely don't want to do. But if you don't do them, you can get kicked out, ostracized. And so your survival basically depends on you participating.
And conforming.
Mm-hmm.
I told you about a dream recently that I had where I was in the position to help a young person.
Yeah.
And I mean, take dreams for what you will, but that was a really powerful experience for me. And I feel like often I have those in my dreams and while watching things like The Power of Myth with Joseph Campbell, where I start to think deeply about what my, so to speak, purpose is. And I feel like it's constantly reoccurring to me that that's something I'm supposed to do somehow, whether it's in the actual educational system, or through some other avenue, helping people who can't help themselves. So I think starting small is a good way just to be there, just to show support, however possible. Sometimes it's easy to just get stuck in your own small routine and not look out from yourself. The only other thing I wanted to end with was how the documentary ends, with India saying, as soon as you think that nothing like this can ever happen to you, that's exactly when it can. That's the part that scares me, is you don't know how susceptible you are until it's kind of too late. So don't fucking join a cult, huh?
And this is something that Mark Vicente said in the earlier series. No one joins a cult. Who knowingly volunteers to join what they consider to be a cult? That's just not what happens.
No.
They join something that they feel is a worthy cause that is going to help their lives, that is worth possibly leaving their family and friends behind and turning over autonomy and submitting to somebody and something else in order to get the blessings or improvements or salvation that this is telling them that they can get if they participate.
I really appreciated that from the first documentary too. From the perspective of the person that this happens to, that's not what they signed up for.
Yeah.
No one signs up to be a sex slave and to be branded with another human being's initials on them.
No. Because if that was on the curriculum from the beginning, it wouldn't work.
No. It's much slower.
Celestial polygamy is not in the first discussion.
Can you
or
imagine?
any of them.
No. Really not in any discussion, even today.
Mm-mm.
No. Thanks for extending your hand to get me out of this mess.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were open enough to even have those initial conversations about how I felt about what I was learning and what felt so ridiculous about just learning it then. Like, how did I not know this? How do you not know this?
What is even happening?
Yeah. I mean, the goal, I think, is to be able to receive information that contradicts what you believe and be open to the possibility of having your mind changed.
Yeah.
If you're going through life thinking that you have it figured out or that you are participating in a system that has it figured out and is figuring it out for you, then you are in trouble.
That is a red flag.
And many people have said this, and I think it's just a good maxim to have. I want to believe as few untrue things as possible and believe as many true things as possible.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
If Mormonism was true, I would want to know that. And based on the information that I've taken in and will continue to, it's not. I think I would have found it by now. It's very hard to convince somebody that they're wrong about the thing that they feel they are the most right about.
When it becomes part of your identity, it's hard to distance yourself from it.
All you have to do is put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's doing the same thing under a different name, i.e. Scientology. Wouldn't you want to know that Scientology is absolute bullshit if you were in Scientology? Wouldn't you want somebody to try to show you that? Wouldn't you hope that you had the capability to grasp that and realize that you were wrong? I mean, just put yourself in that headspace for a second and realize that you have to allow the possibility that you're wrong about anything.
Absolutely. That really...
It's difficult, but
yeah,
it is absolutely necessary.
It really all does start with putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And if you can't do that about a religion, you got to start somewhere smaller.
Yeah.
Because it expands from there.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Joseph Campbell says, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Mm.
One step at a time from the very beginning. It might take you a while, but it's worth it.
Amen.
Did we cover everything, you think?
Did we?
According to my notebook.
Well, there you go. Thank you for doing all that.
Thank you for listening to me ramble. And get really excited about all of this nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
But they're important They're important concepts.
Yes.
So thank you for this discussion.
And thank you. And thank you, listener, wherever you are.
And if you have any comments or suggestions,
Absolutely.
questions, or concerns, let us know.
Yep.
And how can they do that?
siblingsinzion@gmail.com or Instagram, Twitter. You can go to siblingsinzion.com and see all links to most or all of that. And yep.
And we'll see you on the other side.
See you there or see you on another time. I'm Dan.
I'm Lisa.
And this has been Siblings in Zion. Good night.